Essentially, progressives were people who tried to progress the United States by fixing the problems of the Gilded Age, such as bad labor conditions, segregation, and class gaps. In this video, I'll be talking specifically about labor conditions. During the early 1900s, labor conditions were horrendous, and there were two big public figures that were fighting to change this in their own ways. William Big Bill Haywood and Upton Sinclair. Alright, I'll say it now. Big Bill Haywood did a hell of a lot more for labor reform action-wise than Upton Sinclair did. While Sinclair was sitting around writing his novels, Haywood was out there physically fighting and rising to fame, though this was thanks to his trial for murdering Idaho Governor Frank Steunenberg, of which he was later acquitted. But that's not the point here. The point is that Bill Haywood made more meaningful and progressive contributions to labor reform than Upton Sinclair ever did, and about 100 years later, we got Obama, who was kind of like Haywood. Let's start with some historical context for everyone's not-so-much favorite writer, Upton Sinclair. Now, Upton Sinclair was only known as a progressive for labor reform because of his novel, The Jungle, in which he described the horrors of the meatpacking industry. The story describes the life of a young man, Jurgis Rudkis, an immigrant living in Chicago with a group of friends from Lithuania. While working at the meat factory in the story, Jurgis witnessed underpaid workers with skin diseases, men frequently losing fingers, crippling their backs, getting tuberculosis and coughing blood onto the floor, using toilets next to where the meat was packaged with no soap or water to clean their hands. Yeah, it was a classic tale of this place sucks and I want out. The story also told of how the meat was doctored by chemicals and mislabeled for sale to the public, and how the workers processed dead, injured, and diseased animals after regular hours when no meat inspectors were around. And keep in mind too, all of this was based upon Sinclair's own experience and research in meatpacking factories. The Jungle eventually became known worldwide, and sparked a fire in American citizens when they realized that the food they were eating was a bigger lie than Columbus discovered America. So Sinclair wrote The Jungle, and it sparked a fire in the public, hence him saying, "I aimed at the public's heart, and by accident I hit it in the stomach." He didn't mean to create a wave of disgust about food. He wanted to change the labor practices put into place at these factories through giving the people passion, not anger. The Jungle eventually led to the government introducing the Meat Inspection Act of 1906, which required meat to be properly labeled and packaged, and the Pure Food and Drug Act, which regulated food additives and prohibited the use of misleading labeling on food and drugs. This in turn also led to the creation of the Food and Drug Administration, also known as the FDA for those that aren't good at acronyms. But this is where the problem begins.
Hey, I don't see what's so wrong with this guy. He progressed American labor to make meat packaging factories safer and healthier and increase the quality of our food. What's the problem with that?
You're exactly right. There wasn't a problem to us. There was a problem to Upton Sinclair. As a socialist, he believed that meatpacking plants should be publicly owned and operated by citizens, not government organizations. So he didn't like the results of The Jungle. Not only that, but Sinclair didn't even want to be identified as a muckraker. He simply wanted to be known as a novelist and nothing more. All of these factors having an unintended outcome and not wanting that outcome are what now lead him to be called an accidental muckraker. Now let's get into William Big Bill Haywood, the man who took intentional action to change the world of American labor. This is a guy you have to thank for the Union guys. Despite losing one of his eyes whittling a slingshot when he was 9, Haywood began working as a miner in a Nevada mine at the age of 15. This was also the same time when he saw a man lynched and was shaken to fight oppression. At the end of his workday, Haywood was so exhausted that he could barely walk to the company-owned barracks where he slept. On top of this, he was paid a mere $1 for every 8-hour workday that he worked, a mere $30 a month. By today's standards, that's the equivalent of about $860 a month. The average white American male at the time made around $50 a month. This fact led Haywood to admire the empowerment unions gave workers and pursue having complete unionism among miners, though he would then end up crushing his right hand in 1896, forcing him to give up mining. But he still pressed on. Haywood joined the Western Federation of Miners and quickly rose the ranks until he became secretary-treasurer and spearheaded the fight for 8-hour days and organized massive mining strikes, the longest of which lasted 15 months at Cripple Creek, Connecticut in 1903, and were described as almost like a war by some. On December 1st, 1904, the miners were finally given what they had been asking for and were granted a minimum of $3 an hour for an 8-hour workday, though in 1905, the protest result led to the mine owners paying a vigilante by the name of Harry Orchard to bomb and kill Idaho's 4th governor, Frank Steunenberg, while he was passing through the gates of his home. Once caught, Orchard told the police that Haywood and his associates paid him to do it, and Haywood was put on trial for murder, of which he was later acquitted, or found innocent by the court, with the whole fiasco causing him to have international fame. These actions sparked the idea of unionism in the United States, leading to Haywood joining the Industrial Workers of the World in 1905, in which members included workers from anywhere regardless of skill, sex, or race, directly paralleling Haywood's want for the end of oppression and want for equal rights in the laboring class. The IWW would also go on to fight in many other labor strikes for the benefit of the working class, with Haywood's ideals as their guiding light in a sense.
So what's the point here? What makes Big Bill Haywood any more of a progressive than Uptown Sinclair?
Simple answer. Mr. Sinclair was an accidental progressive, and Haywood was an international progressive, whereas Sinclair did some research and wrote a book that changed things totally against what he believed in for the most part. Haywood took physical action and rallied with the public to gain what he wanted and progress the nation towards one with better labor practices. Sinclair did this too, but not with the heart and soul of a true and meaningful progressive. Now let's fast forward to modern day and look at one of our most prominent progressives for labor reform, one that will make you say thanks Obama, 44th United States President Barack Obama.
Thanks, Obama.
So what did Obama do for labor reform as a progressive? What do you think he progressed in the Democrats' minds? 8 days into his first term in office, President Obama passed the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. This act made it easier for women to sue employers for not giving them equal pay as men. Obama also extended health insurance laws, along with the creation of the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, aka Obamacare. He also increased work pay, benefits, and leave time for those living in the United States. The next few things are what's really relative. President Obama helped make it easier for small groups and graduate students at private universities to unionize and made union elections proceed on faster timetables. He was a union guy, just like William Big Bill Haywood. He was a pro-union, well-known labor reform progressive, just like Haywood was. But did Obama make a truly meaningful and progressive change for society? Overall, he was successful in helping the people and was very meaningful and progressive in the way he wanted to make things better as the leader of the United States. So the answer is yes.
Obama out.
Can you sum all of this up, please? This is a lot of information.
Haywood was a more meaningful progressive for labor reform than Sinclair was because he actually reached the intended outcome and took physical action instead of literal action like Sinclair. Obama is like Haywood in the way that he was widely known and was very pro-union and tried to move the country's labor world forward.